Hi. Sorry about that. Ooh, it is cold tonight, really, really chilly. So I hope you are all tucked up safe at home. I've got my little hat on. Been told by you lot to wear one and keep warm, so I have. I'm just going to give it a little while for everybody to turn up. If somebody can do me the favour and just let me know that you can hear me, please. And then we can get started. Hi, Louise. Hi, Lucy. Mary, Andrew. Hello there. Just give me a comment just to say that you can hear me, please. And tell me if you can hear me loud and clear, because I've got my little microphone hidden away somewhere. I think I have, anyway. Oh. Yeah, it's there. Yep, can hear. Oh, lovely. Thank you very much. Oh. Hi, everybody. Oh, we've got quite large numbers already. This is wonderful. Right, so tonight I'm going to tell you some ghost stories. I'm going to do a combination of off the beaten track from my tour and a little bit of my tour as well that I usually do whenever you guys book and come along. But first of all, I wanted to tell you something that you have not heard before. And first of all, I'm going to just turn you around and show you the King's Manor. Now, I know I have talked about the King's Manor in previous videos, and there is the King's Manor. Unfortunately, we can't go inside because it's all locked up tight with the lockdown. Speaking of lockdowns, I am legally allowed to come out for a walk, and obviously whilst walking I am doing this tour for you, so all is nice and safe. And it is freezing. But the King's Manor, built for the King, of course, and it is very, very haunted. I have told previous stories about the King's Manor in the past. However, some of you may or may not know that earlier in December last year, 2020, I came here for a ghost hunt. Yes, a ghost hunt with some lovely people from Paranormal Research York. And I'm not going to tell you too much about what happened that night because that is actually their business and they will reveal anything that they wish to tell you in the future. However, I can tell you about my personal experience. So the King's Manor has been many things. It's currently now a school for archaeological and medieval studies. So part of the University of York, I believe. But it was built for the kings and queens of England, King's Manor, of course. It's been used by King Charles I when he was falling out with Parliament and he hid here for a bit. It has also been a school and a school for the blind. Now, for those of you that are familiar with Anne Lister or Gentleman Jack, she actually attended the school here at the King's Manor and fell in love with her very first lady love, Eliza Rain. Now, her signature isn't on here, but a lot of those glass windows up there used to be the dormitories for the girls. And they all scratched their names onto it, telling you who they loved or who they were romantic with way back then. It's quite sweet, actually, and they've survived all this time. But then when it was a school for the blind, I'm not going to tell you anything more except for it was a school for the blind, but there's going to be a point to this when I tell you what happened to me. Now, until this event, I'd never actually been inside the King's Manor ever before. So it was quite a pleasure and a privilege to actually go inside and have a look around. And we weren't pre-told anything about other haunts that are not published on the internet or anything like that. So I didn't know about the underground, the kitchens, upstairs, anything like that. I just knew the odd story from what I've read in books. But I was taken downstairs into what was the kitchens. It's still the kitchens now, but it was the kitchens when it was the King's Manor as well, and when it was the schools. And I got taken down a corridor and I was told to close my eyes beforehand so that I didn't get any preconceptions of what it looked like downstairs or in this particular corridor. Now, I'm not going to tell you I'm a psychic. I am not. I'm very sensitive and sometimes I pick up on things, and if you've watched previous videos with me and Mad Alice, yes, I do think I hear certain stuff. But I am completely untrained and I can only tell you what I think that I sense or feel. But whilst I was downstairs, Claire, one of the lovely ladies who took me down there, she said to me to close your eyes and come with me. So she took me down a corridor and then reversed me into a room. And I instantly freaked out and said to her, "Get me out of here, get me out of here." And she said, why, what's up? And I said, "There's a really tall shadow of a man in here. He's a nasty piece of work, and this room was a prison cell. Get me out of here, please." So she took me straight out, and I looked down the corridor, and in my mind I could see blood up and down the corridor. And I said, "Oh, some nasty stuff has happened down here as well." So she took me away from the room, and she said, "Would you like me to tell you what that was about?" And I said, "Yeah, please." She says, "Well, you're right. We have had it confirmed by staff of the King's Manor that they often see a tall, dark shadow figure down here of a gentleman. And when it was the school for the blind, unfortunately, when the children were considered to be naughty, they used to get dragged down there, down the corridor, battered as they went down, and would be kept in that room, and it was classed as a holding cell, even though that's not what it was originally built for." So I thought, ooh, that is quite spooky. And I picked up on all that. So yeah, maybe I'm quite good at this sensitive psychic malarkey, I don't know. You decide, that's entirely up to you. But right now I'm going to take you around the corner to the York Theatre Royal. It is, I believe, the second oldest theatre in the country. The first one, I think, is in London, Drury Lane. Drury Lane, London, you know what I mean. Drury Lane, beg your pardon. Fall in love and consummate, shall we say. But of course that didn't matter because they became lovers and eventually... Sorry, that nearly cut out, guys. By the way, I'm going to quickly say this, everyone. If the video cuts out, I'll come straight back on, alright? It's just the internet's been really weird these last few days. Where was I? Oh yes. So they fell in love and she fell pregnant. And the monastery got wind of this, highly illegal, and so she was arrested, if you will, and as punishment she was bricked up alive. She was walled up alive for her sins, and of course as time would go by she would then die from starvation. Now it is said that this nun, despite what happened to her, is still here haunting around, but she is meant to be very pleasant and very friendly, and she is actually a good omen if you see her. If you see her before a performance, then the show will be a great success. There have been multiple sightings of this lady, and I've often thought since this lockdown she's probably wondering where we've all gone. Now a few years ago, I'm going to turn you around now to face me. A few years ago, I came here to the Theatre Royal to watch a production called Sherlock Holmes. It was The Hound of the Baskervilles, that was it. And before I came to that production, they'd been doing some renovation in the theatre, and they'd altered all the auditorium and revamped the stage, all the usual stuff. But when they were doing their digging around, they found obviously some remains of the old monastery, so they had to stop work, get the archaeological team in, and do whatever they've got to do, and then finish the job. Well, after that had taken place, we all know that sometimes if you disturb an old building, then you unleash things, spiritual things, ghosty things. So when I went to go and see Sherlock Holmes, Hound of the Baskervilles, came to the interval and I thought, right, time to go to the loo, as you do. I don't want to go into the dress circle section, I'm not going to go downstairs because it will be packed, rammed, no way. Now, since I know the Theatre Royal quite well, I knew there'd be some public loos upstairs in the upper circle. And I thought, yeah, nobody will be up there, I'll go up there. So I shot upstairs. And I was right, absolutely pitch black was the toilets, and the automated lights came on. And I thought, good, yes, excellent. No queues, can get back downstairs, have my ice cream, and not be rushed. Yeah? We all think the same, don't we? So, I'm going to show you this in a minute. So, I went up there, went in the cubicle, won't go into details obviously, but whilst I was in there, I thought I heard the door open and close. So instantly you think, oh, somebody else has got the same idea. And then the cubicle next to me, the door opened and closed. It didn't lock though. but I didn't hear any footsteps. And I thought, well, there's got to be somebody in here. And I looked down, you know, to see if there's any movement, shadows or anything like that, and there's nothing. And I listened to see if I could hear any movement or breathing or anything like that, and there's just nothing. And I thought, I don't like this. This seems pretty strange. Well, I'm going to be brave. I'm in the toilets, for God's sake. I'm going to go out and wash my hands. Now, when I came out, I'll tell you now that in the toilets it was wall-to-wall mirrors, and I did not want to look up at all. I thought, if I look up and I see something in those mirrors, that's it. I'll be done. I'll be weeing again. So, anyway, then famous last words came out of my gob, didn't they, out loud? Because I then looked at the cubicle again and saw that there was no feet underneath those doors, and yet I could sense something was in there. And I instantly said, look, I'm a ghost walk guide. I don't get scared. You don't frighten me. I washed my hands, and as soon as I finished washing my hands, I was about to go to the hand dryer when all of a sudden the door just rattled at the cubicle, and I didn't see anything, but I sensed whatever it was that was in there was coming towards me, and I was like, right, forget drying my hands, I'm off. Shot straight out of those toilets, down into the dress circle, saw my friend, and I was white as a sheet, and she says, you all right? I said, I'll tell you later. I still missed out on my ice cream, didn't I? Because I was too busy thinking about what happened in the cubicle. Typical. And I actually posted that on the Facebook, years ago now. It's got to be 5 or 6 years ago. And the Theatre Royal, one of the marketing team, actually got in touch with me and said, I'm really pleased you said that, because since our renovation, loads of people have been complaining about various parts of the theatre, including the toilets. So thanks for confirming that. I was like, right, okay then. So if you go to the Theatre Royal, don't go to the upper circle toilets, guys, okay? There's somebody not quite right in there. Now, I'm going to turn this around here because this is a really beautiful sight. This here is the York Minster. Beautiful. I hope you can see that all right. The York Minster took just over 250 odd years to build. We've still got some of our Christmas lights up, bless them. It was completed in 1470, if my memory serves me right. So it's a very, very old structure indeed. And for those of you romantics out there, and you know what? Here's an idea. Actually, no, I'll tell you the idea in a second. I'm getting ahead of myself. I do that sometimes, sorry. I'm just going to get closer so I can point something out to you. It's really sweet and romantic. Aww. Yeah, you'll all vomit when I tell you. If you haven't watched the previous videos, then you won't know about this. I'll just cross, make sure I don't get mowed over. And here we are. Nearly. It's a rather large road. Right, have a look at this. So, big window, right? That big middle window right there. You see that there? It's like a heart shape. That is called the Heart of Yorkshire. And here's the romantic bit. It's said that if you kiss... Oh, it's gonging. If you kiss your love beneath this heart, then you will be destined to be together forever. And I had this wonderful idea. Now, many of you can't be here in York at the moment, so why don't you look to your loves now whilst I'm stood here and give them a kiss? Go on. If anybody actually proposes here and now, I want to know about it. So the Heart of Yorkshire. Now for the spooky stuff. Now, I have told this very recently, but I've since discovered something, and I wasn't sure whether to tell you or not, but I'll tell you, because you know that I like to tell you the truth about some stuff. Now, obviously, I am a big believer in the paranormal and in ghost stories. However, I'm also a great believer in debunking absolute tosh and rubbish. And sometimes I don't like to tell certain stories on tour, just for the simple reason that, well, it's not true. But anyway, the York Minster is home to a ghost story about a lady who lived in the Victorian era, and she was attending the Minster as she did every Sunday. And she was feeling particularly worried about her brother on this day, because her brother was currently away at sea. Now she went to the Minster and decided she would say a prayer for him and light a candle. When she got to the Minster, she went up to the altar, lit her candles, got down on her knees, and then she started to pray for her brother. Then all of a sudden, out of the blue, a hand was placed upon her shoulder. And she looked up, and to her amazement, shock, and surprise, she saw her brother standing before her. But he looked a bit dishevelled. He was dripping wet, deathly pale, and he leaned into her and he said these very words: "There is a future state." And with that, he then faded away and disappeared before her very eyes. Now you can imagine she promptly fainted, as you would. And other people in the Minster witnessed this, ran to her, brought her round, sat her up and said, "What was that? What on earth did we just see?" She then promptly burst into tears, and she declared that she was very worried and upset about her brother, because they made a pact with each other when they were younger, that if one should die before the other, which is highly possible, if at all, could they come back and tell the other one if there was indeed a life after death. And then she went home and sadly received word that her brother had died at sea. He went overboard. So, is there indeed a life after death? It's gotten a bit blurred there, 1 second. Sorry, it went blurred, so I thought I'd just turn you around. So, is there indeed a life after death? It's a pity whether you go up or you go down. He didn't tell her, that bit, did he? I'll start again. He didn't tell her that bit, did he? Oh, the cold. It's getting to me. I am wrapped up warm, don't worry. So, is there a life after death? We don't know, but that was a very interesting story, and it was always believed to be true, even though there's no real evidence. Now, if you listened and watched my Ghost Stories for Christmas back in December, obviously I was reading and researching and learning bits and pieces left, right and centre, and I picked up a Charles Dickens novel. Charles Dickens, who famously wrote A Christmas Carol, but he actually wrote a lot of ghost stories, and I've got the book of his ghost stories, some of which are very, very good, but I didn't think they'd quite make the cut for the story, that night that I told the stories. But I found something, and I can't remember the exact title, but I think it's just called A Ghost Story or A Haunted Story. It's a short story by Charles Dickens, and guess what? It's the identical story. The very same story. The only difference is it's not based at the York Minster. Now, I don't know if it's a case of somebody got the idea from Charles Dickens and then wrote about it and published it as a York story, or it's possible because Charles Dickens has been here to York at least 4 times. One of those times was to read A Christmas Carol to the general public. Maybe he's heard the story and written it about York, but not actually included York in it. I'll leave that to you to decide. So is it true? Is it not? Is it debunked? Who knows? Who knows? Now let's see if this is going to not blur itself. We'll have a look at Stonegate. Ah, that's better. Oh, one last look at the Minster. There you go. And we're going to go down here. Oh. Yeah, thank you, Tess. Tess Humphrey. I do like to do my research as best as I can. So we are now approaching Stonegate. Stonegate is a lovely old street filled with your shops, your pubs and the malarkey. Hello there, hello. And there is actually an old Roman road that leads beneath our feet and all the way up through the Minster and then out of the city. Obviously, York was founded by the Romans in 71 AD, and it was actually called Eboracum, which meant place of the yew trees, because all this area was surrounded by yew trees. So Stonegate has quite a lot of history to it. And one of our stories, we're just coming up to it now. This here is the Antique Centre. And the Antique Centre is said to be haunted by a little girl who is affectionately known as Victoria. Victoria was a little girl, a daughter of a doctor who lived at this property. And the story goes, it's just a short one guys, the story goes that one night he was having one of his many lavish parties. And at a certain time of night it is time for all little girls to go to bed. And like all little girls, they don't want to go to bed. They want to stay up and have fun with the adults. They want to know what's going on. Nosy. But no, of course, she is sent up to bed. Off you pop. And so she goes upstairs, stomping up the stairs in a huff. And the steps in here are actually like a circular staircase, and they go up several floors. I'd love to be able to take you inside and show you, but anyway. She goes up and she gets to the very top floor. And she decides that she doesn't want to go to bed yet, but she'll be sneaky. She'll try and listen in to what the conversation is, listen in to all the people downstairs. And so she gets a little poof, and she stands on top of it and leans over the banister. Unfortunately, she leans a little bit too hard over the banister and she falls all the way through the centre and breaks her neck smack on the ground below. Obviously people witnessed this, especially that of her father, and her father was devastated and he never had a party ever again. He gave up being a doctor and he just dedicated his life to mourning her loss. And of course he would pass away not long after from grief. Now her ghost definitely still haunts here. She's regularly seen. She's very cheeky, very mischievous, nattering away, sat on the counter, banging her feet against the counter, sorry. And she likes sweets, so sometimes if you leave her a little boiled sweet, they then go missing. Some might argue it's the staff, but no, apparently she does like sweets. Sounds like somebody's alarm's going off. Sorry about that if you can hear it. What else happens in there? Oh, and another one is that lots of things that are in locked cabinets in the Antique Centre then get moved from one cabinet to another, even though nobody has actually done that. So it would seem our little Victoria is quite mischievous, very mischievous. Now this is my favourite building, probably my most favourite in all of York, to be honest with you, and not because of the shop. Oliver Bonas. Oliver Bonas used to be known as Haunted, number 35 Stonegate. The Holy Bible above the door, right there, is to indicate that this used to be a bookshop merchant's and a printer's way back then. The stained glass window, stained glass because a chap called John Knowles, who was a stained glass painter, he lived here. But in later years, like 10 years ago, this was called Haunted. A chap called Jonathan Kane, who was an astrologer for the local newspapers, along with Uri Geller, the famous spoon bender, they bought this place and made it into a psychic museum. The psychic museum didn't do too well, apparently, but they did notice that when they were doing some renovations that they seemed to awaken spiritual activity. Now, as I said before about the Theatre Royal, we do find that when you knock buildings about or alter things, you do find that things become alive again. And because things were so strange that were happening, things being moved, people seeing stuff, and right down to being violent, people getting pushed and shoved, Lots of people been pushed down the stairs, all that sort of nasty stuff. They decided, actually, to hell with the Psychic Museum, let's make it into a haunted house attraction, but with no actors and no gimmicks. I myself decided to come and have a nosy at this place in 2011, just to see if it was true or if it was just a gimmick. Because, of course, you're going to think, is it just a show? Is it just a gimmick? Is it just an attraction? Some might disagree and say, yes, it was just an attraction. Others will have another opinion, me being one of them. Went into this house. There are no actors, no gimmicks, no nothing, just little radios that come on whenever you enter a room and tell you the history and the ghost story. Some rooms felt fine, they were fine. Other rooms felt truly horrid. I'm going to turn you around. They felt truly horrible. And I was really jittery and thought, yeah, I don't like that. And in one room that was called the mask room, it was wall-to-wall ugly-looking bamboo masks. And I'm going to keep walking whilst I tell you this now. Wall-to-wall ugly-looking bamboo masks. And in that room, I actually felt really heavy on my chest, like I couldn't breathe. And my hair got tugged and pulled ever so lightly. And yet there was nobody behind me. So I decided, right, forget that, I'm out. And I promised myself I would never go back. Then about 3 weeks later, I got a text message from a friend of mine called Ewan McGregor. Not Ewan McGregor that you know and love, obviously. He's just got the same name. And he said he was doing a one-off scare attraction in York. Do I fancy it? And I says, yeah. What's a scare attraction? He says, it's a bit like the York Dungeons. You get dressed up and you frighten people. Right, that's a job. You get paid to scare. Okay, sounds fun. I'll do it. I don't think I'm very scary. Where's it at? And he says, you know that house down Stonegate? It's called Haunted. I've rented it out for one weekend only. We're going to do it there. Right. My face fell. And I said, Ewan, have you actually been in that house? It really is haunted. It does not need any actors. And besides, I have since done some research, and apparently scare actors work alone in the dark. I am not working alone in the dark in a haunted house. You can forget that idea, find somebody else. Anyway, he says to me, oh please Mackenzie, please, I'm really stuck for actors, and I'm not stuck for actors, I'm just stuck for actors that would be good at scare acting. Scare acting is not an easy task. I think you'd be very good at it. That, and you're the only person I can think of that will fit this nightie. Nightie? What are you going to do to me? He says, I'm going to make you look like the girl from The Ring. Long black hair, white gown, that sort of thing. All right, nothing to do with talent then, Ewan? Just that I'll fit the nightie. So anyway, he said, look, Mackenzie, I promise you, you will not work alone and you won't work in the dark. How's that? Just for you, diva. Oh, diva, me. I said, oh, go on then, it'll be a laugh, won't it? Ghosts or no ghosts. So anyway, August 2011, for one weekend only, I worked there. And if you ever go into the shop, go to the very, very, very back of the shop. There's some little steps. They've now been painted grey, sadly. But that was my room. And it definitely stitched me up at Ewan, because the actor I was meant to be working with was upstairs. And he'd poke his head over the banister every now and then and say, yeah, all right. Yeah, great. And the lighting I had was the grand total of 5 battery-powered tea lights on alternate steps. Not for my benefit, just so that the guests would know where they're going. So I was truly alone in the dark in a haunted house. Needless to say, I was not impressed. But you know what, despite it all, it was a great experience, both as an actor and for paranormal stuff, because, and it's up to you if you believe it or you don't. I'm not going to try and convince you, this is just my experiences. On these ghost walks, I like to tell you my own experiences as well as the stories, to give you that reality of what could be. Now, whilst I was sat on those steps every night, all night, every night, I was in somebody's way. Somebody needed to get down the stairs. And so I'd be constantly getting up off the stairs, going downstairs, turning around, nobody there. My wig, big black heavy wig, once got pulled off my head, and again I looked behind me, nobody there, it wasn't the guy from upstairs, and to top it all off I did check to see if I was sat on the wig, and I wasn't. So I could never explain it, but thankfully that was only the tamest thing that happened to me. There was a lad who worked for us called Matthew, and Matthew was a devoted skeptic. He did not believe in ghosts. And myself and other actors would get changed in the attic, exchange stories and blah, blah, blah. And he'd sit there going, really? Honestly, come on. It's a dark, creepy building. It creaks, it groans. The imagination's running away with you. Get over it. Oh, okay then, Matthew, you know, you might be right. But you believe what you want to believe and vice versa. Not hurting anybody, are we? However, on the final night, I think he changed his mind. You see, on the final night, myself and the actor from upstairs, a chap called Mark, who was sat on the steps together, he decided to come and keep me company. And we were both sat there having a natter, and we suddenly heard this bang and then a scream, and Matthew flew out of his room, down the stairs, and he was a whiter shade than white, took his mask off, pulled his hood back, and he had a bump on his head and blood coming down the side of his face. Now I'm looking at him going, oh my word, what's happened to you? Do we need to call security? Because unfortunately, scare actors, we do get smacked. It happens. It's not nice. And he went, no, no. I don't think security could ever help me, but will you please come with me to the attic to get changed, because I'll not go by myself. I'll not go back in that room. You can never pay me enough to go back in that room. I am going home. But please come with me to the attic to get changed, because I will not go by myself. All right, yeah, that's fine. I'll have to get in touch with Ewan. But, you know, don't worry, we'll patch you up, we'll calm you down, and we will catch these people, whoever did it. He said, no, you won't. No, you will not. I can't actually believe that I'm sat here telling you this. But whilst I was in that room waiting for people to come in, I could see both entrances and nobody's been in and out for ages. And I suddenly felt really heavy on my chest, like I couldn't breathe. And I stood up, and then I felt like somebody got hold of me by the neck, or the scruff of my neck, and pushed me. And I smacked my head just on the corner of the radiator. I don't know how I did it, but I got straight back up, spanned round, ready to smack whoever it was, and there was nobody in that room. Just me and the masks. I'll not go back in that room. Now, obviously, I've had time to think about this, look back and thought, that's the room where I felt really heavy on my chest and like I had my hair pulled. So, yes, we converted a skeptic. Now, I did eyesight Wendy Oliver. Do the occupiers report any ghostly sightings? Now, Oliver Bonus, as you've just seen, sadly, Jonathan Kaner could no longer afford to look after the building, so he gave it up to, I assume, the council, City of York Council, and they now rent it out to Oliver Bonus. There has been countless reports and sightings, and people, including the staff, often tell you about how things have happened, things have moved, they've seen stuff on CCTV. Unfortunately, though, for security reasons, they can't post anything on CCTV. They can't post CCTV on the internet, which is understandable. But yeah, I've even had some staff comment on these talks and said, oh yeah, there's some really weird stuff that used to happen. Anyhow, I'm going to turn you around now and show you this. This is the Shambles. There you go. The beautiful, famous street. The Shambles is derived from an Anglo-Saxon term meaning flesh shammel. So this was the street of the meat market. Built around the 1400s, these buildings here. Obviously they've been renovated and altered over the years. But otherwise this is largely how it's always looked since those early days that it was built. The buildings were built deliberately close together so that the sun and rainwater would not come down and spoil the meat that would be put on display on these shelves or hung up above our heads on hooks, some of which you will see here. 1 second. I don't know if you can see. There you go. So there's some hooks where they used to hang the meat, and they put the meat on display here and along the shelves all the way along the shambles here. Every other one of these shops used to be a butcher's. And I did learn something quite horrific from a tour that I went on at Christmas time by a lovely lady called Sarah. So thank you, Sarah, for this info. But at the top over there, we used to bring cattle, sheep, pigs, whatever. We'd bring them all down this street, take them into the shops, and then, I'm sorry to say, butcher them, put the best cuts out on display, etc. Come Christmas time, the staple Christmas meal was not Christmas turkey. Turkey didn't become a thing until Charles Dickens published A Christmas Carol. It used to be goose. Goose was more the Christmas meal tradition, along with other meats, of course. But when the goose were babies, earlier, say like about August time, when they were roaming around, to stop their feet getting damaged and so that they could actually walk down these streets to the shops and things to be butchered, basically, they used to dip their feet in tar and then put little, little stones around them, so they'd make them look like they had little boots on, so they didn't damage their feet and they could still walk around. Because obviously cobbled streets and things like that could damage their feet. Quite barbaric, really, isn't it, when you think about that? Poor little goose. Sorry, I'm just scrolling through, keeping up with your comments. So yes, this was the meat market. But in those days, we did not have bins or hygiene or anything like that. So all the blood, guts, heads, trotters, etc. that they don't want would be literally thrown out into this street. So all this little cobbled street here, it looks like a grate, and it is. This is where all the muck would be chucked out into. And also in those days, we don't have toilets. So all your blood, poo, wee, everything, you name it, everything went out to the middle of the street, and you would be walking amongst all that. And it got cleaned out once every 2 weeks. Ugh, imagine that being your job. Now, if you think your job was horrible, or is horrible, imagine having to shovel all that lot every day. So it gets shoveled all the way down here, and all the way down to what is known as the Golden Fleece. And I'm going to show you the Golden Fleece. And then from the Golden Fleece, it would get shoveled on down, I believe, to Hungate. That's what I'm led to believe. And around Hungate, at the time in the Victorian period, Hungate was one of the many slums of York. The poorest of the poor would live there, and it was essentially a cesspit. Today, Hungate is now adorned with very, very, very expensive flats and houses. Starting prices roughly about £400,000 or £500,000. That's just for a 1 or 2 bed. However, if you've got any hoity-toity friends that live in Hungate, or they're going to live in Hungate, and you want to get your own back, just say to them, "You do know you're built in a cesspit." That'll blacken the day. Wait, it's a ruddy nose weather, guys. Excuse me, I may just have to blow one's nose, so I'm sorry about the sound effect. And if any of you were watching my last video, you'll know I forgot my tissues last time. I have not forgotten it this time, I have remembered. So excuse me. Oh. Excuse me. There we go, done. Right, over there, this narrow building. Yep, that porky little building right there is the Golden Fleece. I'm not going to spend too long on the Golden Fleece, purely because it was spoken a lot about in the Haunted Pubs talk. So if you want to see that, go into the videos for Shadows of York and look up Haunted Pub Crawl. And it's on there. The Golden Fleece is said to be one of our most haunted pub in York. Starting with the cellars, there's been allegedly sightings of ghostly Roman soldiers, and that is because it goes down to the level of old Roman York. Not an uncommon sighting, apparently. But also in this pub cellar, along with many other pub cellars in and around York, and in pub basements, shop basements apparently, we used to store dead bodies that had been executed out on the Knavesmire. The Knavesmire is where our racecourse is today. So if there was somebody famous like Dick Turpin, or a lord, a lady, or a witch, to make some extra cash out of them, we used to store their bodies overnight in a pub cellar, so that we, the general public, for entertainment, can go to the pub, pay a penny, run downstairs and look at the body of a famous person. Isn't that nice? Yep, that was your entertainment back then, guys. So that's the ground floor, and I'm going to zoom up ahead to the top floor now. I'm not going to spend all night in the Golden Fleece. The top floor, that upper window right there, that is my favourite room. That is the Minster Suite, famously haunted by a World War II Canadian airman. Now, some of you are probably thinking, what's one of them doing in York? Well, during World War II, we were stuck, and the Canadians sent over their best airmen to England and parts of Europe to help us out. At the back of the art gallery in York, we used to have some wooden huts where a lot of the lads were based. And some were staying in various hotels and pubs in the surrounding area, and one was staying here in that room. His name was Jeff Monroe. Jeff was heartbroken because he'd just received word from home that his wife has left him for somebody else. Now, this poor man is absolutely devastated, crestfallen. He's out fighting a war, and if he wins, what's he going back home to? So, So he drinks himself stupid and goes to the back of the pub area, so not this front bit, the back of the pub, and he throws himself out. He throws himself out of the tallest window, the highest window, and he meets his end on the pavement below. Poor old Jeff. So needless to say, anybody who's ever stayed in this room, the Minster Suite of the Golden Fleece, have often complained of seeing a man in uniform. Many people have been looking in the mirror, they're brushing their teeth, brushing their hair, and they've seen a man standing behind them. They jump, turn around, but he's not there. And yet when they look back in the mirror, he is still standing behind them in the reflection. Same room. I'm going to move on now because there's some loud people about. Same room. People are snuggled up in bed next to their loved ones, getting comfortable, at least they think they are, because it turns out that whoever is there isn't really there at all, and the sheets then disappear down, and whoever they're staying with flushes the toilet and comes out of the bathroom. Ooh. Imagine that, sharing your bed with a spook. So does anybody want to stay at the Golden Fleece? No? Fair enough. Oh, Dick Turpin. Now, I never talk about Dick Turpin on tour, do I? I've never done it. I've usually left that up to other people. So just for tonight, I'm going to give you a brief history of Dick. Leapt on his horse, famously they say, on Black Bess, and rode all the way. Yes, sorry, I did notice it froze. Sorry about that. It'll come back. Can everybody see me? I'll just hang fire because there's quite a few numbers have dropped out there. I'll wait for you to come back. I don't know what's going on with the signal in York tonight. I'm really, really sorry, guys. I'll just wait and hang fire a second for everyone to come because we don't want anyone to miss it. Hello everybody. If you dropped out, I'm really sorry. It did freeze. Don't worry, you've not missed anything. I'm just waiting for you all to come back. And I anticipate that when I post this video, it won't have actually frozen on the video itself. So if you watch it back again, it'll be fine. I'm sorry if I sound nasally. It was -1 when I came out here. I don't know what it's going to be when I get back. Where was I? Who was listening? Dick Turpin, Gregory Gann. Oh yeah, got a name for himself. Leapt on his horse, Black Bess. Obviously, that's just a legend. He didn't make the trip all the way from Essex to up north in a single day. It was actually impossible to do that, particularly on one horse. However, he did do it fairly quickly on several different horses, and he ended up somewhere in the north. He kind of moved about a bit. I think he ended up in Lancashire first, but then he made his way into Yorkshire. And he was still up to his old tricks. He was still horse stealing, doing all that sort of stuff. But he adopted the name of John Palmer to obviously hide his identity. He did marry. He married a woman called Elizabeth, so Betty Turpin. Anyway, one day he was out in Beverley. Beverley is a town about 20 miles away from York, something like that. And he was out one night getting rather ratted, shot a cockerel, got arrested, banged up in Beverley prison. And he was going to get put on trial, and so he decided, I'm not having none of this. Wrote a letter to his, who was it? Sorry. Oh, his sister's husband. Brother-in-law, that's the word, I couldn't think of it. I'm daft, I'm sorry. Brother-in-law. But when it got down there, down south, he hadn't paid enough for it to be delivered, so the brother-in-law didn't want to pay the postage stamp, refused to, and it just so happened that the old headmaster or teacher of Dick Turpin, he recognised the handwriting, and he realised that this letter isn't from John Palmer at all. This is the famous highwayman Dick Turpin, and he's currently locked up in Beverley prison. We've got him. So they write back to Beverley, tell them exactly who they've got in their custody. They then ship him off to Castle Prison. Castle Prison is where the Castle Museum is. You've probably heard me talk about it a lot in previous videos. And there he is then condemned to be hanged by the neck until death. And that execution would then take place out on the Knavesmire. Now, Dick Turpin, when he passed away, obviously by hanging, because he was so famous and because he was such a pull and a draw to the public, they put his body on display in a pub cellar. And the pub was called the Blue Boar. The Blue Boar still exists today. However, there is a discrepancy as to whether it's the actual identical building or if it may have been the building next door. But I'm going to point that out to you later. But in this particular pub now that's called the Blue Boar, as and when we reopen, you can actually go into the cellars of the Blue Boar, and they've got a coffin down there, and they've made it look like a smuggler's cove, so you can sit and have a toast to old Dick, old Richard Turpin. Oh, sniff, sniff. Now I'm going to tell you a new ghost story. Now I'm really sorry. I've read it several times, but it's the first time I've actually told this story ever, and not told it on any of my talks or tours or anything. So if I'm really patchy or sticky, I apologise, okay? And remember, guys, if it freezes up, just come straight back on. I've not gone anywhere, okay? We're now approaching Coney Street. I'm going to turn it around so you can see Coney Street. Also, if we do get a bit busy around here, I may just have to take us elsewhere, but I'll point out some bits and pieces first. So this is Coney Street. Boots family. And Spurrier Gates. But yeah, down there is Coney Street, and we're headed down here now. I read a story in a book called Ghosts of an Ancient City. Some of you have since bought that book because I've mentioned it many times before. It's a good book. It's fun to read. There is some quite unique stories in there. And it talks about the Black Swan Hotel, not to be confused with the Black Swan Pub, because there is a Black Swan Pub on Peasholm Green, and we're not going down there tonight, so don't get confused. Now, this hotel used to be here. I'll just get around this section. I'll show you where I'm meaning. So here you go. This building now, Sports Direct, It used to be called BHS, so if you want to have a little read up on the Black Swan Hotel, you'll probably see that it says BHS department store. Obviously BHS went out of business a long time ago. It's now currently Sports Direct, but the building used to be here. This was the Black Swan Hotel. In fact, there's a plaque here. I don't think you're going to be able to see it. We'll try. There you go. So that's the Black Swan Hotel, as was. I'm going to walk us away now because it is going to be noisy down here. I think we're going to get disturbed. Anyway, the story goes, that was a coaching inn. For real, that was a coaching inn. It was one of the largest coaching inns in York. And this street here leads to a bridge, Ouse Bridge, and it was one of the main routes in and out of the city of York. It used to take 4 days by horse and cart to get from London to York or York to London. Where's the Blue Boar? Don't worry, I'll show you where the Blue Boar is. It used to be called the Little John. Oh, Louise, you beat me to it, Louise. Well done, thank you. So yeah, it took 4 days to get from London to York and vice versa. At every stage meaning every stop, you had to refresh your horses. So there would have been loads and loads and loads of horses in stables and things around there. And the story is that once upon a time in Sheriff Hutton is about 3-4 miles away from York. It comes under the York Vale, shall we say. There was a chap who was a farmer there, and he was engaged to be married to a lovely lady called Nance, and the chap in question was called Tom. Tom very, very, very much loved Nance. Nance was the love of his life. She was everything to him. He would do anything for her. Nance, however, she loved Tom dearly, but as young girls, they do have their head turned when a dashing young man comes along. Now, this dashing chap comes along, sweeps her off her feet, promises her wealth and protection and to be loved and adored and be safe for the rest of her life. And in those days, that's exactly what you wanted. As a woman, you needed protection, you needed wealth, you needed something to make sure that you were safe. So she was wooed, swept off her feet, and she ran away with this chap. Unfortunately, he wasn't everything he said he was. He was a dirty liar. He was a highwayman, had his way with her, and just left her. Tom, not knowing any of this at the time, was absolutely devastated, crestfallen, soul destroyed, heartbroken. Absolutely heartbroken. And so, bless him, you know, he left his farmlands and everything in Sheriff Hutton. He went off to just become a coach driver. And he spent the next year riding from various locations, mostly from Hull to York, picking people up and taking them from one place to another. And then one day while he was out, he encountered a lady in the middle of the road. And he pulled over and he went to her and he instantly recognised her as being Nance. Nance looked very ill and dishevelled. She was freezing cold and she had it in her arms, a baby boy, a son. She told Tom all about what had happened to her, that this guy, he wasn't who he said he was a highwayman. He left her in the lurch, left her with child, left her ruined, everything that she never wanted to be. And bless him, Tom, he took pity on her. And he loaded her into the carriage, and he rode all the way back to a tavern in York, probably the Black Swan. And unfortunately, she was not going to get any better. She would die not long after they arrived. But on her deathbed, she professed her love to Tom and told him that she was sorry, that she always loved him and she should never have done what she did. But please, 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 Tom, will you look after my child and raise him as your own? And Tom, being the gentleman that he was, said yes, he would. And he took on her child, and she would sadly, of course, then pass away. He, once again, is devastated. He is absolutely beside himself with grief. He's lost the love of his life, as anybody would. But then, years later, he's still a coachman, and he's riding along, and he happens to be in Durham. And there's 4 gentlemen, quite high society gentlemen, they want to lift from Durham to York. And they want to get to York before 8 p.m. for a meeting. They are going to the Black Swan Hotel. Well, Tom is quite a confident young man, and he says, yeah, absolutely. And they promise him, I think, so many guineas and 2 shillings or something. It was quite a lot of money. And he was determined to get these people here safely. And he knew the roads well. However, as he was riding along, he was about 10 miles away from York, and it suddenly became thick with fog. And unfortunately, in fog, there's no headlights like there is today. There's nothing like that. And the streets aren't quite like our roads today. They are cobbled, they are dirty, they are well, some of them were roadless. There was no routes at all. It was just soil and land. So poor Tom realises that he is not going to get these people to the destination on time and may not get paid. And so he's quite saddened with himself, and he has to slow right down. When suddenly, in the distance, he sees a white silhouette, a mist, a figure of a lady. And then all of a sudden she disappears, and he feels somebody sit next to him on top of the carriage. And he feels these cold but gentle hands wrap around his on the reins. And then snap, the reins went, and the horses galloped off into the fog. Tom, however, was not afraid. Tom knew, it's Nance. It's my Nance. And he knew that she would guide him and show him the way. And so he allowed the horses to gallop ferociously through the fog, despite the complaints of his companions inside the carriage, begging him to slow down and stop. But he was confident. He was confident, and they galloped and galloped and galloped, and eventually they made their way to York and finally pulled up outside of the Black Swan Hotel with time to spare. He looked to the side, and he could not see Nance, but he felt her gently stroke him upon her hands as if to say goodbye. And of course that made him a very happy young man indeed. He actually felt like he had witnessed his Nance return and get him home safely. And now whenever it's a long old story now, it's a Victorian story, but obviously ever since then he always told his children that if you're ever in a pickle and you're out in the dangerous wilderness trying to find your way home, Nance will always help you, she'll always get you home. And that was the new ghost story. So it's not a scary story, but I still think it's a nice story, and one that you don't normally hear about in York. The Blue Boar, ladies and gents, where Dick Turpin was said to have been placed, is here. So there you go, this is the pub. But, and I've not really been able to find anything, guys. This is just what other people have told me. But we think that maybe it was somewhere further around here, the original pub. I cannot confirm that to you, but if just for the purposes of this video, we're going to say that this is the original Blue Boar pub, where Dick Turpin's body was placed in the cellars. And now we're going to head down to Clifford's Tower. Excuse me. Whilst I'm walking along, I'm just going to see if there's any of you that have left any questions or anything. Hiya Neil Jackson, good to see you. I hope you're enjoying yourself. I'm missing you guys, I really am. Hey Janie. Sorry, I'm just scrolling through. Molly Boudin, I'm sorry if I can't pronounce your name, Molly. Say hello to Sue and Chris, they're loving it. Hi Sue and Chris, nice to meet you. Hello from Manchester, hello. Yes, I hope you're all enjoying it. I'm sorry if it's not going to be for everybody, I appreciate that, but you know what, we're all bored, we're all at home, getting fat. So might as well come out and do something, haven't we? Right. A bit of exercise for me and entertainment for you. What can I say? Hi, is there any ghost stories about the National Railway Museum? Yes, there is. I'll tell you about that shortly. Right now, though, I'm going to spend a penny for seeing the bodies. I don't know about that one, love. I'll have to look into that. But anyway, sorry, digress. This here is St Mary's Church, not to be confused with St Mary's Abbey that you can see the ruins of inside the museum gardens. I'll just go around this corner. Now, I know I've told it again in previous videos, but here you go, this is it. There is a point to me showing you this. Now, in front of you here, yes, there's a couple of tombstones there, gravestones. All of this area here was a graveyard, and yes, it has been built on top of. Despite popular belief, yes, we did bury some felons, so there is some famous dead people that would have been buried around here as well. Now, that is St Mary's Church. Now, bear that in mind, okay? We're going to come away from it, and I'm going to take you to Clifford's Tower. Oh, excuse me. Ooh. Oh, that tree changes every night up ahead. There's a tree outside the Castle Museum, and every time I see it, the lights are different. It's got to be the best tree in all of York. Oh, crumbs, I forgot. Right, Clifford's Tower, ladies and gents, is having a bit of TLC. It's a very old building. It needs a little bit of love. So it's currently got a load of scaffolding around it. So I do apologise. It does not look like that all the time. But not only that, they are doing a little renovation on the inside, and they're giving it a bit of a tidy up and putting some new bits and pieces inside of it to improve the experience. And rightly so, it needs it. If we don't look after it, it'll be gone. So if anybody's complaining about it, don't. Anyway, little secret. Actually, it's not a secret. There's an audition for voice actors, and I think they just want people of York, from York, and that'd be me. So I'm going to audition and send a little video off to do a voiceover thing for when they open up this attraction again. Wish me luck. Yeah, I think they're adding floors, Benjamin. They're particularly putting in a roof, not on top of it, if that makes sense, but like a roof on the inside so you can walk across. That's what the general idea is with Clifford's Tower. Anyway, Clifford's Tower, ladies and gents, this is it. It is sadly home to one of the most horrible and darkest stories, a very true story, and I'm going to tell you here and now that this might upset some people, but it is basically a huge massacre. I'm not going to get closer because there's an alarm going off somewhere and I don't want to bleed your ears. In 1190, the year 1190, there was quite a large Jewish community here in York. But unfortunately, as you know, we had a bit of a falling out with the Jews, largely because they had all the money. You know, they were wealthy, they were richer than the church, and a lot of people of York owed them money as well. It was just typical. But there was a big falling out, big thing against the Jews, and so 150 Jews were rounded up in Clifford's Tower. Unfortunately though, a big, massive crowd of Christians were surrounding the castle and baying for their blood, and they said to them, if you convert to Christianity and come out peacefully, we will let you live. Obviously that was a bald-faced lie, and the Jews knew this, and they knew that their days were numbered. They can either face the mob and be killed, or they can take their own lives. That is exactly what they do. They slit the throats of their wives and children, and then slit each other's throats. The chief rabbi and all the others, they would either commit suicide, or some actually did go out to meet with the Christians and meet their fate with the Christians as well. So absolute bloodshed. It was devastating, it was horrible. It has actually a black mark on our history here in York. It is horrific. Around the front not that you'll be able to see because, you know, it's all scaffold and building site, there is actually a plaque that will tell you to commemorate the massacre that took place in 1190. The mound that it stood on top of is all, you know, greenery, and every spring to commemorate them we have hundreds of thousands of daffodils surrounding the tower. There is one particular supposed story that the walls bleed sometimes as if it's the blood of the Jews, but actually no, it's not. And Neil Jackson, you're correct, it's actually just a chemical reaction with the stonework that makes it look like it's bleeding, but it's not. So yes, occasionally, when the weather's right, Clifford's Tower looks like it's bleeding. Not often, but yeah. I'll turn you around. So, excuse me, cold weather's getting to me now. The point that I wanted to say with the church is, and this is a story, and I think it's in that book, A Ghost of an Ancient City, a lady somewhere, she went for a past life regression therapy. And if Paul Goddard's watching, by the way, he does past life regression, and he does it online as well, so if you want to have a bash, go see Paul Goddard. Hi Paul, if you're watching. I did it with him, it's quite interesting. I didn't go very far back though, I think I went back to the 60s. So, oh well. But anyway, a lady, she had past life regression. And by the end of it, it was said that she lived in York, roughly around the 12th century. She was Jewish, and her name was Rebecca. And I think she might have been a little girl, or a very, very young lady anyway. But she died, she was murdered in an undercroft in a church that was quite close to a tower, a castle tower. Well, obviously, we know about the massacre of the Jews here in York, we know about Clifford's Tower. The only thing we could pinpoint that was closely related to this, church-wise, was indeed St Mary's Church. However, St Mary's Church does not have an undercroft or an underground or anything like that, so we quickly disregarded the story until years later. Years later, I don't know if the floor fell in or if they were just doing some renovation, but either way, they discovered underneath this church, that church that I just showed you, St Mary's, that there was indeed an undercroft, and found hidden behind a bricked up wall was some bodies. I'm just going to let this car go because I'm going to cross over. Thank you. They found some bodies that had obviously been killed, butchered, murdered, and one of which looked like the skeleton of a young girl, as would have been. That's what they found from their archaeological dig anyway, in research. So we then went immediately back to the story about this lady who had done a past life regression, and obviously she wouldn't have known about all of this, and yet she was able to reveal details about there being an undercroft in a church, the Jewish massacre, etc. So there you go. Now then, somebody asked me about the National Railway Museum. Now, again, I have told stories about that in previous talks, but I don't know if those talks are still online, so I'll tell you. I used to work at the National Railway Museum. The Railway Museum is one of the largest, in fact, if not the largest, railway museum in the world. Home to lots of famous trains like the Mallard that broke the world famous records for steam. I think 126 miles an hour, I can't remember. About 126 miles per hour steam locomotive. That's pretty good going. You've also got the Flying Scotsman, who famously did trips from London to Edinburgh. Very quickly indeed, way back then. Then you've got lots of other replicas like Robert Stevenson's train and stuff like that. The original is down south at the Science Museum in London, I think. Thank you, Benjamin. It was 126, wasn't it? Yeah. Me and numbers, we don't go well. I'm not very good at numbers. So anyway, the Railway Museum used to be the train shed. So you had the train station, and then you had the shed where all the trains were kept. And the original area that would have been was in Station Hall, and of course in the Great Hall. If you go to the museum, the Great Hall looks really modern. Well, it is. It's rebuilt. But in the old days, during World War II, you know, it was still a train shed and lots of work could be carried out. Now, sadly, in April 1942, there was a raid here in York. The Germans came and bombed us, basically. We got totally obliterated in parts. Coney Street that I just showed you, that was blown up in parts. Guildhall, the church, things down there, totally destroyed. Amazingly, the Minster was missed. Excuse me. But sadly, the bomb did land on the train shed of the National Railway Museum. It killed a few people, one of which was a young lad who was only 17 years old. Now, we do believe that he is said to haunt around that particular area, and there is actually a section in that Great Hall where there's a plaque on the floor, and the plaque will tell you that on this site a bomb landed and blew up the trains and, you know, created mass devastation. It's around that area that we feel the cold spots where the people were killed, particularly this young lad. Nobody's ever seen him, but we've done, one of my friends, Tom, he's done ghost hunts there. He used to do them quite a lot. They don't do them anymore, sadly, I think just for insurance purposes, but he picked up on a lot of information and found out that it was the ghost of a young man, and that's why it gets quite cold around there. But there's also a mail carriage. Now, I'm going to quickly say this. The Railway Museum itself is very, very haunted, but not because of the building itself. It's more to do with the items that are in there and the carriages themselves that carry the ghosts. I'll just show you this. Hang on. I'm digressing, I'm sorry. Look at our Christmas lights. Still up. Isn't that pretty? I think they've taken the Christmas tree down, but the Christmas lights are all there. And I'm looking up at you and I'm blinded. So, yeah, everything's connected to the trains and stuff. Now we've got a mail carriage in there, Royal Mail, and we think there's a ghost in there called either George or Fred. Can't remember, it's one of those two. Let's be fair, all ghosts are called George or Fred, aren't they? But anyway, George or Fred, he haunts inside this carriage. He's been seen by lots of people, guests and staff alike. And he's often muttering to himself, thinking that these letters are not put back right, and he moves them about. And when they come to check on, you know, the carriage and make sure everything is where it should be, because guests aren't allowed to go across the barrier and move things, they'll regularly find letters are all over the place or been moved, so they put stuff back, and then it gets moved again. And so we assume it's just George or Fred doing his job, trying to tidy everything up, getting the letters sorted for their destination. Then there's a personal story of mine. It's quite rude. Ish. There's a cafe in the Great Hall called the Mallard Cafe. About 14 years ago when I worked there, first time round, I've been there twice, but the first time round that I worked there, it used to be called the Signal Box Cafe. And little me, bored, freezing cold. It was about this time of year actually, it was freezing cold. Nobody's going to the museum in January time. So it was boring, really boring. And I'm leaning over the front of the counter with my posterior poking out. And I suddenly, and I don't even mean just a little bit, I mean I had a proper clout right across my backside, proper slap. And I jumped up and, turned around. Nobody there. And this area is quite large. It's concrete floors. And initially I thought it's a security guard, because I got on really well with all the security guards. And I thought, how cheeky. Yeah, I looked about and there was nobody to be seen. There's no way that they could run that fast. And you definitely hear them running away as well. And not to be rude, but they're quite old boys. They aren't running. So there's nobody there. Anyway, this used to happen quite regularly. When I say regularly, once a month, something like that. Yeah, very saucy, you're right, Peter. So I thought, well, charming. Anyway, where am I going to take you? I'm just going to cross over. Anyway, one day I plucked up the courage to talk to somebody about it, an explainer, tour guide. And I says to him, "Yeah, I'm a bit embarrassed about this, but I'm going to have to tell you. But first of all, can you tell me if you know of any ghosts around here?" He says, "Oh, there is a few knocking about. Why?" I says, "Well, I think we've got a saucy one. There's one that really likes me. He keeps slapping me across the backside." He says, "Oh, right, I've got an explanation for that." He says, "You see that carriage over there?" Anyway, he points me to a carriage. I says, "Yeah." He says, in World War II, that used to be used by the Germans as a brothel. He says, "A lot of ladies get their backside slapped round here, so don't worry, it's not just you." I'm like, "Oh, right." So we had a randy ghost in there, some German chap. So if you go to the National Railway Museum, guys, girls particularly, watch out when you're around the Mallard Cafe, all right? Now that leads me on to another ghost story, actually. What was that? 50 Shades? Who said what? Hang on. 50 Shades of Spook. Julia, I like it, you're right. What a rubbish film that is. Anyway, we won't talk about that. It's meant to be a family-friendly programme, this. Speaking of family-friendly, I have got a talk coming up, excuse me. Family talk coming up about fairy tales. It's not what you think. It ain't going to be nice and Disney-fied, so for the love of Mike, whoever Mike is, do not let your children watch that talk with me in a couple of weeks' time. It ain't child-friendly. It's not deliberately rude either, it's the truth about fairy tales, and I'm not making it up, but you'll be quite disgusted. We all want to be disgusted, don't we? We're disgusting human beings, it's what we love. So, going back to the National Railway Museum, that same chap who told me about that, he actually told me a ghost story regarding Gudrun Gate. Because I was just starting out my tour, and I said to him, "I'm doing some research and I really want to find out about Gudrun Gate, and I can't really find much in the line of ghost stories." He says, "Oh, well, don't worry, because I actually know one if you're interested." I said, "Oh, yeah, what is it?" He says, "Right, you know currently the church, the Holy Trinity Church, I say currently, you know when it was closed down for renovation?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "Right, my mate is I'm going to turn you around, you want to see what's ahead, there we go. My mate, he's a mason, and he was working alone inside the church, and what they were actually doing is they were renovating the floor, because the floor was getting cracked and dangerous, so they had to replace the stonework. And he was working alone one day. Obviously everything's locked up, nobody can get in, nobody can get out apart from him. And he saw this lady sat in a pew one day saying her prayers. Well, he jumped out of his skin because he thought, she didn't make a sound until then. And he thought, well, how the heck has she got in? She shouldn't be here. What's she doing here? So, not to be rude, he allowed her to finish praying. And she was dressed all in black and quite a frail looking thing. And when she'd finished, she looked over at him and said, "Oh, you're all right, love. Nice to meet you. What are you doing down there?" And he says, "Hello, love. Well, as you can see, I'm just doing a bit of work on the floor. But what are you doing here?" And she says, "Oh, I just come here every now and then to see me prayers. I'm quite a regular, you know." He says, "Oh, aye. Well, I don't wish to be rude, love. Maybe I've left the door unlocked by accident, but everything's locked up tight for the simple reason that I'm doing this here work and nobody should be here. So if you don't mind, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." And she says, "Oh, that's fine, don't worry, I shall leave you alone, but I might see you again." Off she trundles. He thinks nothing more about it. A few weeks later, he's working on the other side of the room, fixing the stonework there, and he suddenly leaps out of his skin because he hears a woman's voice, looks over his shoulder and sees a lady sat in a pew saying her prayers. And he thinks, by God, it's her again. doesn't she realise that this place is meant to be locked up? So, hang on a second. I haven't, love, I'm sorry. It is me, darling, how are you? Just doing a live, sweetheart, okay. So this here, over there, is the church. Holy Trinity Church, and I'm going to take us down here. So he says, my goodness me, what is she doing here? She shouldn't be here. And he looks over at her and she finishes her prayers. And he says, right, love, I know that you're a nice old soul and that you're just here to say your prayers, but you really, really shouldn't be here. I don't want you to get hurt. It's really, really dangerous for you to be here. And she said, oh, don't worry, love, I just come here to say my prayers. He says, yes, I understand that, but honestly, sweetheart, I don't know how you've got in here, but you have to go now. She says, no problem, I might see you again. And up she gets. Well, by this point, he's thinking, how is she getting in here? So he goes outside, check the gate, check the doors, and everything's locked. How has she got in? So he then thinks, you know what, maybe I'm jumping the gun, maybe she's a volunteer or something and she is meant to be here, but she shouldn't be. So he calls up the chap who you know, has hired him for the job. He says, here, have you got a lady dressed in black that comes to, I don't know, do flower arrangements or something? And the guy says, no, I haven't, why? He says, well, there's a lass that comes in here, old girl, usually dressed in black, and she comes in, sits in a pew and says her prayers. And I don't know how she's getting in because everything's locked up, so I assume she's got a key. And he says, no, there's nothing like that at all. Anyway, after a bit of a chat, the guy then comes clean and says, right, sir, I don't wish to worry you or upset you or frighten you. Do not worry yourself about that lady dressed in black. She's quite harmless. She comes in, says her prayers and goes away again. And he says, yeah, but you must understand, love, that my insurance will be wrecked if anything happens to her. She can't be here unless she's working for you. And he says, well, she doesn't work for me. And I'm going to come clean, and I don't care whether you believe it or you don't. I cannot do anything about that lady, sir, for she is our resident ghost. Obviously, he promptly laughs. He says, get on with you. What a load of rubbish. I'm going to turn you round. Oh, sorry. Get on with you, what a load of rubbish. And he says, no, straight up, that is our resident ghost. Anyway, he hangs up the phone and he thinks, yeah, cobblers. But then he has to think. He thinks the doors were locked. I'm the only one with a key. And a church, as peaceful as it is incredibly loud. When I say incredibly loud, it's peaceful, but when I say loud, you hear the doors opening. You hear the footsteps walking along. And in that particular church, the pews are quite tall and they've got wooden doors. You would definitely hear those doors be opened and closed and creaking and groaning. And never once has he heard any footsteps. He's never heard her come in. He's never heard her leave. And it's then that he freaked out. And then he started to get my friend from the National Railway Museum to come with him to work, even though he shouldn't do, because he was absolutely terrified at the prospect of this woman turning up again, just in case she was real and really a ghost. Now, I'm sorry we got interrupted there, chaps, so I had to quickly run and it did slightly put me off, so I do apologise. Yes, somebody's asking me about the child in the window story. It's a difficult one to tell right now, purely because of everything that's going on, and I don't want to offend anybody. I might be able to ghost around it, but I just thought I'd show you the Minster here at this angle. I know I've shown you multiple times before, but you never get sick of it, do you? What time are we on? Ooh, we've gone an hour and a half. Go on then, I'll tell you one last story. Let's pull up a pew somewhere. Oh. In fact, I do have another story that I was told very recently. just over there, I'm going to point it out to you, there is the chapter house, that little bit on the side of the building there, right? Security guards are constantly inside the Minster. The Minster has its own police force. It's the only one in the country that does, as far as I'm aware. And obviously it's just to help protect it. But they are responsible for looking after the buildings in the area as well. And if the alarms go off, they've got to go and check them out. And one night when they were locking up, somebody turned off the lights in that building there. And the lights are proper light switches, you know, you have to flick them down. And as he left the room, he heard them all click back on, turned around, checked the light switches, and they'd all turned themselves back on again. So he freaked out, left the Minster, or I should say left that section of the Minster to go back to his offices, and the Minster lights were basically left on all night because he wouldn't go and turn them off again. Rightly so. I think I'd freak out in all. And that was told to me by a very good friend of mine called Justine. She actually gave me the name of this chap to speak to, and I've forgotten to get in touch with him actually and find out more stories. But anyway, if you're watching, sir, thank you very much for that info. Right, I'm going to give you all a disclaimer. I don't want anybody to get upset with this story I'm about to tell you. It is basically about the plague. I'm no fool, I know what's going on in the world, okay? So don't be upset. It is a totally different disease. It's something we shouldn't really ignore because, you know, diseases happen, they do, and the more we learn about them, the more we can actually fight them, you know, and learn from our mistakes. This story is actually probably a very good example of how we should learn from our mistakes. So if the plague is going to upset you, don't listen. That's all I'm going to say to you, okay? I do not want to upset anybody. I've lost people to COVID this year, very close to me indeed. I've got people that have got it, I've had it myself, and it is a nasty thing. It's nothing like the flu, so I'm not saying this story very lightly, okay? I'm not making fun of it, and I just wanted to tell you that before I do. Because we're all in lockdown and struggling financially. But yes, here we are. I am going to tell you this story. It is actually one of my favourite stories, to be honest with you. It's my favourite because it is quite dark, it's disturbing and very sad, and yet has a bit of evidence for it. This building here, large window and a small window. I'm not going to keep my camera on it because it's somebody's house, but I want you to bear it in mind, okay? I'm going to walk away now. To us here in York, that house is known as the Plague House. And the reason for this is the plague came here to York in 1604, not for the first time, not for the last, but it was one of the most deadliest. And we roughly had about 10 to 12,000 people living in the city. By the time the plague had left, 1 year later, it had killed nearly 4,000 of those people. Everyone is truly terrified, nobody takes any chances. Now, the family that lived in that house were a mother, a father, and they had a little girl who was roughly around 6 years old. And they went upstairs to tuck her in and say their prayers, but they noticed that she was covered in red spots. Fearing that she had this disease, they locked their only child in her bedroom. They then went down the stairs and barricaded the front door shut. I'm taking that off now. Barricaded the front door shut. They then painted a red cross upon the door and left York, never to return. And their attitude towards their only child was, she'll be dead soon. We cannot help her. We cannot cure her. And we can always have more children. It's dark stuff, isn't it? So they left York, never to return. But unfortunately, this poor girl, she was seen for several days at the small window, crying, begging and pleading to be let out, screaming for her mother and father to come back, come back. She's hungry, she's thirsty, please let me out. But whenever anybody saw her and went round the corner and saw the red cross on the door, a red cross meaning, don't go in there, this house is infested with plague, They would simply ignore her pleas and carry on about their business. They too don't wish to catch this disease. She will be dead soon. And yet she didn't die. She still, she was still seen at the window, scratching and tapping and banging on the window, pleading for someone to help her, and yet nobody would. Eventually, she would disappear from the window, and 5 weeks pass. They then eventually break down the door of the house, go upstairs, unlock the bedroom door, open it up, and sadly, yes, she is lying dead on the floor. As they approach her body, though, they notice that she has not appeared to have coughed up any blood. She does not have blackened skin or buboes in her neck, her armpit or groin area, and apart from the natural rotting, she appeared to have been in good health. This girl had never had the plague at all. She did not die from the plague. She probably had chickenpox, mumps, measles, child's rash, but not the plague. She died alone and frightened of starvation in that room. Dreadful, dreadful story, and yet a very common one. Wherever you live in the UK or anywhere like that, even abroad, you will have had a plague house. And these things used to happen. Some of you probably think it sounds too similar, and that's why I don't like to say the story now. But, yeah. But these things did happen. Now, the story goes is that we can see the little girl haunting the building inside that window, inside that room. She's still seen at the window, scratching, tapping and begging and pleading to be let out. However, these sightings in recent years have definitely become less and less. And some of us, me in particular, got a bit sceptical because there is a date under the window, the big window, saying 1891. So that means in 1891 this building was either restructured, refurbished or partly rebuilt. So it's not quite the original story, it's not quite the original plague house, can it? If that's the case, is she really there? Is it really that house? Did it take place there? Did it take place in the building next door? Who knows? So we were definitely a bit sceptical just because of that historical element with the building and structures and stuff. Of course, that doesn't matter to ghosts. Ghosts can still be there regardless, but we couldn't find anything factual about it. That is until several years ago when a family lived here. They moved in with 2 young children. Temporarily put them in the box bedroom where the little window is, whilst they were basically decorating their main bedroom out the back. Because this house looks tiny, but it's actually quite large. It extends backwards, if you will. And one night, a couple of nights after they moved in, Mum, she can hear the 2 youngsters chattering away. And like parents do, she went to the door, tapped on it and said, "Come on, you 2, it's time you went to sleep. It's very late. I can hear you." And one of them replied saying,
"Ah, but Mummy, that's not fair. There's a little girl in here and she won't stop crying for her Mummy and Daddy. I don't think she's got one. Can we keep her?"
Mum's standing there going, "What?" So she goes inside, turns on the lights, looks at her 2 kids. No little girl in here. What are you talking about? And they both protested, but
She was there.
and every other night this would happen.
She's there, on the floor, or on the bed.
Or indeed, looking out the window. So Mum in her wisdom puts this down to wild imagination. Bless them, they've got an imaginary friend. I'll ignore it. They don't seem bothered. Anyway, about a week or 2 later, she's been drawing the curtains out the front here, and she's noticed tour guides turn up outside her house. People like me. And she's thinking, I'm going to have to find out one day. So she goes off to listen at the gate. I'll turn you around, I'll show you. So she stood just by the gate over there listening in, and she can't hear everything being said. So as the group walks off down this way, she runs after him, catches up with the main tour guide, a gentleman at the time, and says to him, "Excuse me, love, I don't mind at all. I'd love to come on your walk, but I've no idea which one you are. So can you tell me this? Why do you stand outside my house each night?" Well, his face was a picture and he went, "Oh, do you live there? Oh, you're in for a treat, love. Here, maybe you can tell us something." Tells her very briefly the story. And you can imagine she goes quite pale. Tells him what's been happening with her 2 kids, hence the story got round us a lot. She then ran back inside that house, grabbed the 2 kids out of that bedroom and said, "Right then, I know your bedroom's not ready yet, but you're off in there right now." And she refused to let them go back in that room. Absolutely terrified, horrified. And you're probably thinking, "Why? What's so scary?" Well, as far as I'm aware, whenever this place is up for rent, it's never advertised on Rightmove that it's haunted. It's not a good selling point, is it? For some it might be, but for most not. And her kids were 3 and 5. Now, as far as I'm aware, you don't tell your 3 and 5-year-old that there's a ghost in the bedroom. Not good for sleepless nights. 3 and 5? When did you allow your 3 and 5-year-old to go out into a busy city all by themselves with your wallet? They don't pop off to the Disney store, they go to the bookshop. Can suddenly read and write really well at that age, pick up a ghost book and say, "Seen this? Story here about our room. Shall I wind Mum up?" Not likely, is it? So the question then lies, how did they know? Mum also noted that there weren't tour guides outside the house when this all started happening, so the kids hadn't overheard the story either. So how did they know? Children do say and sense, and yeah, they say very strange things, and we as adults, we are so quick to disregard them and go, "Yeah, that's nice," or whatever, or we just don't understand what they're saying. So my advice to you is, the next time your child or your friend's kid starts talking and saying really weird stuff, do a bit of research. It might truly terrify you. So there you go. Whew. Right, guys, I'm getting cold. And we've been out for over an hour and a half. I hope you've enjoyed it. It's been a little bit different than my usual tour. I wanted it to be different. I'm sorry if I got stuck on some bits or if it was a bit of a drag. It is difficult now to tell you new stuff. So that's why I'm doing talks at home next time. I'm not going to be out in New York. It's too cold, too dangerous. So I'm going to be at home for the next couple of talks, and one of them is going to be about the horrible jobs. Yes. And oh my God, there was some horrible stuff we used to do. So I can't wait to tell you all about that. So if you want to be educated on the despicable jobs we used to have, then please do join me on the 13th of January. And if you do miss it, don't worry. The videos are always going to be available, mostly. So do have a watch. And then after that, as I mentioned before, there's going to be one about fairy tales. I wanted to do this one when I'd done a course on it, because there is a course on Future Learn, but sadly it's not been available, so I couldn't learn everything about it, but I'll do my best. And I think you'll be truly entertained and disgusted about our fairy tales. You will never watch Disney the same ever again. And I'll think of some other stuff as well. So thank you so much for coming tonight. I hope you've enjoyed it. And if you did enjoy it, and you take pity on me for freezing my arse off, excuse me swearing, then please send a little donation to PayPal. Sorry, start again. PayPal me. No. I will remember and I'll post the link. PayPal.me/Shadows of York. There you go. Doesn't have to be a fortune, just a little something to say thank you. Unfortunately, small business people, if we're not rich, we don't get anything from the government. And I'm going to say it like that because it's true. I have researched all day long to see if I can get a grant, if I can get this, I can get that, and I get nothing. So anything you can donate, please do. If not, don't worry, just spread the word, share my page, tell people about it. If you want to help me, you can leave me a review on Google, something like that, or TripAdvisor, but only if you have done the tour or you've done all these talks. Don't leave me any criticisms because I've really built that up, so don't base my tour on the online stuff, if you will. It is slightly cheating, but when we do open up, I want to be able to get business back. So yeah, bit of a pity talk, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Anyway, if anybody would like to walk with me, I say walk with me, I'm going to walk back to the car. If you want to stay online with me, there we go. Keep me company till I get there safely, then please do. If you want to get yourselves off to bed, then please do. Enjoy your warmth, your warm houses. Brrr. But I'm going to head back to the car and I'll try and answer some questions. So if anybody's got any questions about York, stories, blah, blah, blah. Have I got everything? Yes, I have, I think. Hang on, brolly. Yep. Ugh. There we go. I'm going to scroll through some of these comments now to see if there's been any questions. Eleanor, yes, I will post a link for the tip jar. I'll post it at the very end of this talk. Once I get back to the car, or nearly at the car. Do I go this way or should I go that way? I'll go this way. I do know my way, I just want to know which way is quicker. Always love what really happens to Goldilocks thieving. Yeah, there's some really creepy stuff, you know. When I was a kid, there was a video. Remember them videos? A video called The Little Mermaid, but it wasn't Disney's version, it was another version. And I remember watching it thinking how barbaric it was, even as a kid, because it's not a happy ending, you know. And I'm not going to spoil it. You're going to have to watch the fairy tales. But yeah, so in my wisdom, I decided to look into where, you know, all the original stories came from, because obviously we watch Disney, and Disney's great. Particularly the older stuff, I feel. The older stuff really teaches you stuff, and, you know, freaks you out. The villains are proper villains. Today they're a bit namby-pamby, but entertaining. Anyway, I looked into things like Sleeping Beauty, Beauty and the Beast, Little Red Riding Hood, blah, 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 blah. And my face, my gob fell open when I read some of this stuff. And I just thought, geez, were we really that sick? They're called grim for a reason. They really are. So, yeah, do join me for that chat. Hi, I love your tours and love York, my favourite city. Thank you. I'm not saying because I live here now, but yeah, it's my favourite city too. Mostly because it is really safe as well, you know, really pretty, really safe, very historical. I certainly wouldn't like to walk around any other city by myself anyway. Not at the moment. Not that, you know, the UK is unsafe or anything, I'm just saying there's some places that are slightly more dangerous. I've been to York many times, but next time we'll see you in the flesh on a tour. Please do, Julia, it'd be lovely to meet you. But the real live tours are very much more professional and more, you know, snappy and informative and stuff. It's just whilst I'm walking around and making sure that there's nobody following me and all that sort of stuff. So I've got to concentrate on so many things and concentrate on that this video hasn't cut out halfway through. There's a lot involved. It looks easy, but it's not. And, you know, there's a few of us out here doing this. You know, there's Dorian Deathley, he does a really good job. There's Mad Alice, my friend. There's a lot of us. So, you know, do give us all a go. Nigel, he's doing a little dark tours. He's done a couple of videos recently. I think you did one the other night, didn't you, Nigel? I've seen you watching me. We're all friends. We all talk to one another and woof woof woof. I'm getting shouted at by a dog. Now there you go. There's always an animal. Every single talk. There's always an animal, isn't there? Last time it was a fox, wasn't it? Well, there won't be any animals turning up on the talks at home. Well, unless Merlin and Sebastian turn up, my two cats. My little monsters. And they meow and meow and meow for England. Oh dear. I don't know what I was talking about now. I've lost my train of thought. Getting brain freeze. Let's have a look. Questions. Think a few of us keeping an eye out around you. Oh, Nikki, yeah, I know. There's a lot of you looking out for me. Thank you. 500 odd people watching tonight at one point. That was awesome. That's so cool. Thank you. Is it Dibble? Jonathan, Fletcher, is it Dibble? Probably. Or Smee. Smee. I do like that story. Any other questions? How about recruiting a chaperone? I'm sure somebody... yeah, lots of people have offered. We're in lockdown, we can't really. And I usually have Brett or somebody with me, but we're just all keeping our distance because legal stuff, you know. And it's fine round here, you know, you're always going to get somebody that just passes comment and stuff, but I'm safe. But thank you. Who else have we got? How long have I been doing these tours? Marlene, I've been doing the tour, my own tour. It will be 6 years in May. But when I first started, I used to just do private bookings only because I was usually at work or doing something somewhere, so I had to build it from scratch. And then in the last couple of years, started doing a public walk as well as private tours. Excuse me. In between acting work and stuff. Excuse me. Don't worry, I'm not famous. Be nice, wouldn't it? But no, I'm not famous. I'm more known in the scare industry than anything else. But yeah, I did it for nearly 6 years, and I used to actually work for another chap for about a year before that, and decided to branch out and do my own. Who else have we got? Haven't been to York in a few years. Stories. Wow, that's a long comment. Oh, you're welcome. Emily Hurst, thank you very much for your comment. That's really kind. You're welcome. If I miss out on any comments, guys, either tonight or tomorrow, I'll read through all of them and I'll reply to your questions. Or if you want, you can drop me a message if you want to know about something to do with York, if you can't find it out. Sorry, scrolling across the screen there. Yeah, if you want to know anything and I get the chance, I'll answer. In between doing my stuff at home, researching, what have you. Mark Eldon, I'm famous to you. Oh, thank you. It's funny, since I did these online talks, occasionally I'll walk through York and people will look at me and go, "You're Mackenzie, aren't you?" And I'm like, "Oh, they know me. Why do they know me?" And like, you do the online stuff. "Oh yeah, of course I do." And some of you have been lovely. I mean, Andrew Gardner, I think, yeah, that's your last name. It was lovely to meet you a couple of months back. More than that, it was October. So yeah, really nice to meet you, thank you. And I've made a few friends, you know, so it is nice to see you. So if you ever see me, just say hello. Obviously social distance. Yeah, it's nice when you get people recognising you, and thankfully not to say that you're rubbish. I mean, I won't be everybody's cup of tea, but it's been lovely to hear such compliments. It keeps me going, really. I'm not saying I'm fishing for compliments now, by the way. I'm just saying it's nice to know that you do enjoy it and that the fan base is growing. The aim of the game is to entertain and to educate myself in the process. Whew. Oh, good grief. I have to say I do have some mulled wine left at home. Dry January went out the window when I heard we was going back into lockdown, as you probably noticed. I enjoyed my bottle of gin. I need to get another one. I want to try, if you ever come to York, you need to try York Gin, ladies and gents. It's our own distillery. Now, I'm going to tell you here and now, I don't like gin, all right? I am not a gin person. I'm not a gin person, Nicole. But my friend Mad Alice, she says, "Here, you need to try this." I says, "No, I don't." "Yes, you do." "No, you don't." "Yes, I do." "No, you don't." All right, okay, fine. I changed that halfway, didn't notice. Anyway, I went to the pub, tried a York gin, thoroughly expecting it to be awful. And it wasn't. It was lovely. So I went to York Gin itself, tried all their different gins, and they are all amazing. So, yeah, I like them. But I've not tried the new one. And I did message them recently saying I want to try out the chocolate orange one. They made a chocolate orange flavoured gin. Can you imagine that? Chocolate orange flavoured gin. so I need to try and get a bottle. But yeah, when I get home tonight, mulled wine, finish that off. Get warm. Love sloe gin. Yeah, sloe gin's alright. I've got to be honest, I'm a rum girl myself. I like the rum. Where's the rum? Why is the rum always gone? I know we're all a bit, whether we like him or we don't like him at the moment, but I do like Captain Jack Sparrow. He can come and see me any day of the week and share his rum. Oh, right guys, I am nearly at my car. Sorry, I'm just reading your comments. Why is the rum gone? Yes. Captain Morgan's is a good one, Kraken. Or if you really want to try a really strong rum, you've got to try Woods rum. Proper sailor stuff, 57%. Take a seat when you drink it. Yeah, anyway guys, I'm nearly at my car now, so thank you so much for staying online with me and keeping me company, keeping me safe, and listening to me rabbit on about alcohol. You know, I'm not an alcoholic. Oh dear. I'll lose this. I'm not a hat girl either, but I was told by you all to wear one to keep myself warm, so yes mum, I will. You're probably right, because it is cold. Right, I love you all. Thank you so much. I've rabbited on and bent your ears for long enough now. I shall be back on the 13th of January. Please share the life out of my videos and things, and get my name out there, I should say. And I look forward to seeing you all again soon. Please, please, please do leave a tip if you can. I'm going to post that link for you here and now after this video when I get my feeling back in my hands, because that's gone. I do have gloves, but you can't touch the screen without taking them off, so yeah. And thank you. That's all I can say. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'm going to say it, Happy New Year. I know it's been naff, but Happy New Year. I hope you all had a fairly decent Christmas. We've made the most of it, and we can do this. We've defeated everything in the past, and we can do it. All of us, every single one of us. So go and have fun, sleep well, and if you've still got your Christmas tree up, keep an eye on that fairy. Mwah. Bye. Love you all.